there was always a voice in me that's just telling me I need to do this. And there was a weird sense of belief as well, like, let me leave a life of steady paychecks and stability to do something that has no promise and potentially no future for me. And I think the way I've always seen myself, just to answer your question, is for me, there's never been a plan B. Because if there's plan B, like, there's already a sense of doubt. I have enough faith in whatever that spirit or that voice is in my soul. And I feel like if it was genuinely something that was a fad or like something I was going through at the time, I think that voice would have stopped speaking to me a very long time ago. Probably the most controversial part of me being Raf Saperra, which is Adil Sardar Khan, or better known as Raf Saperra. I hail from southwest London, Streatham Hill to be exact, and my folks migrated to London in, I'd say, 1986, and that's kind of when our, I guess, British chapter started. But my Pachokar or my Pend, you know, although I'm deeply rooted in Punjabi folk music in terms of what I've released, but you know, my heritage, my upbringing, my village, my Pend is undeniably, you know, where I'm from and where I've been brought up, which is southwest London, Streatham Hill. That's where I'm from. Like with Raf Saperra, I just remember going through a shitload of different names, some so embarrassing that I'm glad they didn't stick with me. And honestly, around that time, I remember the term raw as folk being used. You know what I'm saying? This is third studio album by a producer whose music I was heavily consuming at the time. And I almost turned this term into like an adjective, like, yo, or just using it everywhere. Like, this is a Punjabi album called Raw as Folk, and I just be going around saying, yo, this shit's Raw as Folk, and yo, that's Raw as... I kind of made it my own thing, and just now I'm in Streatham around my brethrens saying these words. And so it kind of came to me at one point, like, maybe I might just make that my stage or my cipher name, Raf. I'll keep it as an acronym of that. And I remember one of my guys, Veli, I was sitting with him. It was at his yard, actually. We was just there. I was just there like, yo, Vels, this is what I'm thinking. It was between Raf, and I've always really dig the concept of a snake charmer. Not so much how it's been depicted with, I guess, this white gaze that people have of maybe the South Asian subcontinent, and just, you know, but more the romanticized notion that Punjabi music has with a snake charmer. And obviously Jazzy B's Nag, a Bhangra anthem for those who don't know Nag. It was kind of like, yo, man, like, it's either going to be like, that's one of my like all-time favorite songs. So I'm thinking maybe Saperra or maybe Raf. But already you can tell, like, the fact that I'm coming with a name to a rap cipher which still has so much connection to Punjabi lineage, one being a Punjabi album and one being a word in Punjabi. This wasn't something that I was kind of like consciously planning out, like, raw, I want to be that brown guy who's just so hip. Now I think that's kind of become a thing. But yeah, I feel like that was presented to my friend who is not Punjabi, he's Caribbean. And I was there like, yo, Veli, it's got to be one of the two. They're like, I'm thinking either Raf or Saperra. And in this very Veli-esque manner, he's like, fam, he's like, why don't you do both? Raf Saperra. And then when he said it, it definitely had a ring to it. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna run with that. And then for the years to come after that, I don't know, for good or bad, but there was a lot of rap coming out in our little South London cypher underneath the name of Raf Saperra. So it's crazy, you know. Today I sit in front of you, whether that's as a vocalist, musician, artist, filmmaker, screenwriter, I don't know, I don't care. But as a man who makes art, that's the name that I've adopted. And it's crazy that it stemmed from, you know, a very non-Punjabi place for very non-Punjabi purposes. When it goes back to the more, I guess, sound part of my experience of like, you know, just like indulging in that, it was definitely, it was Khan Sab's, Ustad Nusrat Ali Khan Sab's Qawwalis. There was a lot of music my, you know, folks listened to. I was fortunate enough to have a mum that was, you know, like most traditional Punjabi households, my mother and father also have a massive age difference. So, you know, we grew up with a young, groovy mum, and she would be listening to all that, the cool, you know, stuff of that time, and Bollywood music like R.D. Burman, with that very big, but still very contemporary musical sound, you know, obviously, you know, being the son of S.D. Burman Ji, who was so renowned in, you know, his knowledge and approach to Hindi playback music. But, you know, for anyone who knew of the work of S.D. Burman Ji, was very rooted in classical. And then, you know, you had someone like R.D. Burman, who was just a revolutionary, like he had the classical knowledge, but he was the rule breaker. He introduced just this new groove to you know, that part of the world. And my mum's flipping buying the records and tapes and playing all of that stuff. But what she says as a child, what I was just most susceptible to, like a 6-month-old who can't crawl or do anything, like she's left me in the room, she's like quickly popped into the kitchen to do something else, she's come back in, and like I'm completely like on the other side of the room. She's like, what the actual fuck? And it was just, then she's just standing there watching, like, what's going on? And like, bro, like, I'd be rigor mortising on the floor to these like qawwalis, like Khan Sab's voice, Dildar Hussain Ji's tabla, that early truly experience of feeling, I'm a kid, I don't know anything about sur, lay, rags, this, that, and the other, but this ecstatic feeling of music, and with that commanding tal, that commanding rhythmic cycle of a very heavy, like Punjabi Kherwa, 8-beat cycle that's just making this kid who has no opinion on culture, religion, music, or artistic sensibilities of any kind, is just in an absolute spell. And I think that is something, even till date, no matter the kind of music that I make, I still chase innately. I'm always chasing that catharsis, that heavy drop, that command. And like we say, the word in Urdu is like takrar, that is just like that repetition. I would say that was probably like the earliest memory of me experiencing like sound. Firstly, I want to just kind of like point to the fact that I think at the time I didn't know, but I was always just really susceptible to folk, like despite the fact that these brilliant Nusrat Ali Khan Qawwalis, or even these ghazals, or even some like maybe like Hindi film songs, but more so in like the Punjabi scope of things, I didn't really understand the fact that, okay, when we are listening to like Khan Sab's Kande Utte, that's about Soni Mahiwal, you know, didn't know that. I'm just hearing Kande Utte. And a lot of these Ni Main Jana Jogi De Naal, for example, you know, with Qawwali is just one aspect of it. One thing about Khan Sab, and maybe most people don't really understand, because he revolutionized Qawwali music to the point where people think one thing is with the other, but like Qawwali music and classical music are, you know, they might be synonymous with each other, but they are not the same thing. And Khan Saab's obviously Gharana had obviously strong roots. It's a Qawwali Gharana, but at the same time, like their family was like involved with like heavily classical music and classical training. And the fact that Khan Saab, you know, being someone who was from Afghanistan, then migrated to Jalandhar, I believe, and then from there they moved into Pakistan, and that too in Faisalabad. Like all of that character was undeniably present in his presence. In like there was a massive Punjabi element that no one can refuse that Khan Saab had. Whether it was his, the term we may say is like unada sabah, like mannerisms, whether that's the pronunciation, whether it's even, you know, just this very unavoidable folk element that was very present in Khan Saab's voice and songs. And I was always really like susceptible to that. I'm a massive fan of Himesh Reshamia as well. Some people might find that hilarious. It's like, oh my God, Himesh. Nah, bro, Himesh is like one of my top music producers, composers, and honestly, even when he came as a vocalist onto the music scene at the time, I know a lot of music listeners kind of like found his, you know, high vocal range but nasally singing hilarious, but I was like, this is dope. Once again, now in a different kind of field, Hindi playback singing, someone is coming with like, you know, a folk element. And there's a video of Sardul Sikandar ji, rest in peace, speaking about it, and he's there like, okay, like what was kind of like the difference between like the classical Hindu singers and maybe the singers who came from like a Mir Alam background. And he beautifully kind of like breaks it up and shows like within the Mir Alam kind of style of singing, the kind of murkiyan and harkats, and you know, it was a mixture of all of these things that I had no knowledge about, that was just like stirring inside me. And I would release this out in what some may consider the most inappropriate environment, which was Quran reading lessons. Like, yo, I just remember getting in so much trouble because I would be like belting it, like so off key and with such a, almost like a desi, like pindawala twang. It didn't sound Arabic at all. It didn't sound appropriate at all. My Quran teacher would be slapping me up on it. You need to take this seriously. And I'd be there like, I am. Like I thought I did a thing. And I didn't stop doing that. I'm gonna be very honest. And slowly through there, I kind of realized I wasn't approaching the tajweed as I should. I was kind of doing what someone would call an alap in classical music. Like I was staying on one note, but then I'm there dragging it to like other notes. And obviously it sounded disastrous at that time. There was no knowledge of music. There was no formal studying I had done. And probably, I don't know if my intentions were right. You know, I was just trying to belt a voice out. And it felt like the safest and most spiritual and most purest place to do it. And even then, I got licks. But I would say that would be like the first time I kind of explored that. Outside of that, my mother just in general was a massive music head, and she was so, you know, well versed on music and arts because of obviously her father, my nana. And I honestly believe if it wasn't for my mother, I probably wouldn't be exposed to a lot of the music, especially South Asian music that I had been exposed to. But those were kind of like the earliest stages of, you know, influences being put on me way before, you know, than when I started kind of finding my sound. And I was like, yo, okay, now these are the things I'm finding. And then I guess starts my chapter of really independently exploring music, especially Punjabi music. I feel like over the years, people have built some sort of a bias, some sort of an opinion that anything to do with Punjab or Punjabiyat or Punjabi language is somewhat lower class. And I think that is insane, because our land is when we look at the poetry and the literature that has come out of Punjab, from Shiv Kumar ji in Charda Punjab to the kind of poetry that has come out, the land of the five rivers, from you know, Waris Shah ji, Baba Bulle Shah, and like these things are studied, like this is like doctorate levels of literature that has come out of this land. So for people to even kind of think, and these are just a few examples that I've given, for people to then doubt that or feel any insecurity or feel inferior to like another status quo, like I think there's a massive sense of education that, you know, needs to be kind of, and a massive spotlight that needs to be brought onto that. Like Sassi Pannu, Soni Mahiwal, Mirza Sahiba, Heer Ranja. I'd say these are like one of the four main tragedies, but a lot of these are presented in the forms of ballads, and Heer Waris Shah is a big example. Kande Utte, coming back to that Qawwali by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab, you know, Kande Utte Meher Maave, Main Te Kadon Di Khadi, you know, this is from the perspective of a woman. And another beautiful thing that comes out of that is in some cases the relationship certain melodies or compositions may have, but from maybe more of a spiritual or borderline religious point of view. Like I mentioned, ballads, some of these compositions and melodies are very prominently seen in like Tadivars, which is, you know, undeniably present in a lot of my body of work. I remember working with Sukhshinder Shindaji, and Shindaji has very organically and truly been brought up in an environment where, you know, whether it's Shindaji's brothers or his their father, they were surrounded with this. This was like, Shindaji's really grown up in that. So when we were making Snake Charmer, one of my biggest requests to Shindaji was like, despite this as being like a Punjabi Bhangra track, but I still want that essence. There needs to be a Kavishri vibe. There needs to be that kind of Dadi swing to it. And I think that is an undeniable ingredient and part of us as Punjabis, despite what my religious or cultural backgrounds are. There is something so like I don't know why my blood goes so hot when I'm listening to a Dada Sarangi. You know what I'm saying? And that's not to necessarily say that's something for everyone from where I'm from in my part of the world, or what my kind of ancestral kind of lineage or heritage goes back to. But as I said at the start, like, I've just always wanted to be honest and true to the art that comes from my soul. As I mentioned, I've been learning from Ustad Lataf Ali Khan Sahab for, I would say, since 2021. I had a moment where I had completely left music from like 2015 till 2020. And I had to really make a commitment that if I was going to be learning from an ustad, I wanted to ensure that I can give that commitment to the craft as well. I didn't want to be learning from someone and then just, okay, now you see me, now you don't, you know. I'd rather not be learning. But in this kind of field, in this kind of environment, and at a time where the Raf Saperra brand, you know, has seen the trajectory and the growth that it has, whether that's from the love of the supporters, people, and even in terms of the size of, you know, going from doing local shows to now world tours, I'd be a fool to not be under vigorous training to make sure that I'm maintaining that. And not just for those reasons, but to be learning. You know, one thing I've always kind of admired about this Karana is the fact that one of, I would say, this century's finest vocalists and someone within the world of classical music, no matter what side of classical music you're from, every individual shows respect and humbly pays homage to Ustad Salamat Ali Khan Sahab. And, you know, they belong to the Sham Churasi Ghrana, and who is also the father of Ustad Lataf Ali Khan. So it's crazy to have these kind of conversations in front of a camera, because I've been very wary of the kind of environment I want to speak about these things. These are very big names that I'm mentioning, and I've never wanted it to seem like, oh, you should like me because of, look at these people that I know. And in all honesty, I don't think and this is not me trying to be like humble or maintain some sense of humility for the cameras. I don't think my vocal capabilities are of that where I should be mentioning my ustads. You've seen the work, you've seen the riyaz, the tiyari that they have, and you know, I sometimes feel a bit shy to mention their name, because these are like we say pahar, like mountains of not only classical music but world music. And you know, so obviously we are in an environment of people who admire you know, this art, so I feel I'm in a safe space to mention this. But yeah, I've always been a bit wary of that. Maybe that's out of respect, maybe that's out of fear, but I wouldn't want my lack of riyaz to disrespect the names that I've mentioned, whether that's my first Guruji or even my current Guru. But, you know, having said that, I don't think on surface anyone would have thought that a Bhangra folk-orientated Raf Saperra has been exposed to that kind of training. You know, what essentially comes out of my gala, my tone, and I guess my vocal cords is something I haven't really selected. You know, this is something that is, I guess, you can learn gaiki. An old friend once said this, that you can learn music from an ustad, but you can't learn a tone. And, you know, if I have a tone that serves, you know, I guess as a character or voice in this world of Punjabi folk music, that's not something, you know, I've essentially chosen, I guess, or chip Rab ne or Malik ne already diti hai, but to then do riyaz and practice on top of that is essentially what makes craft. And yeah, I'm still learning. 2022 was an interesting year after coming off of, you know, a really solid run of kind of cementing myself and trying to show not only the domestic market in UK, but, you know, neighboring international markets that the core brand of me as a vocalist is still a desi folk Punjabi vocalist. You know, we gave glassy rhythm, we done Millie One, with Sony Music, and so early on in my career I got to work with the legendary Sukshinda Shinda on Snake Charmer. What a song. And then to then see Snake Charmer played at the Dialed In set. I think this is the first Dialed In. I'm guessing it was 2021, and just really seeing that, bouncing, like very Bhangra heavy track being played in an environment of people who, South Asian and non-Asians have all gathered together as electronic and dance music lovers. And in the heart of all of this, you've got this very like Punjabi, Sukshinda Shinda heavy music production. Just seeing the crowd explode, and I was like, yo, that was new for me. And I remember seeing that clip and it gave me the chills. Shortly after that, Barood had been released, but Barood didn't come out till December. October 2021, Young Singh plays at Fabric, and I just went there as an individual who had seen what he had been doing and the way he was very shamelessly pushing Punjabi culture. After his Boiler Room set, seeing Nag, which was one of my favorite songs, then I'm seeing my own song playing at Dialed In. I was like, listen, man, at the time I didn't know, bro, but I was like, I'm gonna come down and support your thing, just as, he was very accommodating. I brought my boys along and we just pulled up with our very own kind of South London, don't really know this scene too tough, but hey, we're here to have a good time kind of vibe. And I just found a place above Singh's decks and we watched the show, and I just remember being called down, and I'm just thinking it was like a friendly interaction. I was like, yo, sure, I'd like to stand in the DJ booth. I've never done it before. And then I remember just being given a mic and like, yo, like sing. And us coordinating with each other like, yo, but like, all right, put on the Bhangra. And he's there like, nah, like do it to the UK garage. And he's like, do you know Punjab BMC's GT Rorte from the Switching album or tape? And I was like, yeah. And whilst the crowd's vibing out to something else, you've got me and Singh just like listening to his headphones, and I've heard it and I'm like, all right, cool. And I don't know, it was just such a rush and so crazy, and in a very ecstatic state. I looked at Singh and I was like, yo, Singh, check this. Almost as if I'm speaking to a friend of mine, and there is enough space for errors and, fuck ups. The reality is there ain't. Like, there's a live audience over here. And I've just belted this Kuldeep Marnak GT Rorte vocal. And then I just hear the crowd screaming back. And now I've tuned in as in like, yo, this is actually going on. And then, I guess the rest is history, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shit went viral. It was discussed by some of, the most influential kind of like dance electronic platforms. And that, started, the collaboration that, you lot see of Young Singh and I. And I feel it's not a thing about just Young Singh and I. I think we definitely are troopers who were contributing were and still are contributing towards a cultural melting point and a hotbed of what London was looking like in 2021, with all of that movement going on, with a Dialed In that had happened, with this Fabric takeover that they were doing. And, I feel like as Raf Saperra, I just played a small part to a very, very big movement that's happening right now in South Asian music. And it was insane, because that's essentially opened up a new pocket of contemporary sound that I've tapped into. And, in 2022, we've then made it a very experimental year. I've dived into hip hop. I've given them this, I've given them that. I've given them Lalkare, which is like a you know, like my love letter to early 2000s hardcore dance floor Bhangra, UK Bhangra in particular. And then shortly after that, we give you NLS, and you know, that premieres at Glastonbury. Once again, a very new crowd who's tuning in. And you know, that was probably one of the first songs I released without a music video. It was just, here's the audio, go enjoy it. And I still remember Young Sing performing at Phonox in Brixton. It's my hometown. Streatham in Brixton's where I've grown up. And we're just, this song has released at midnight and it's 3 a.m. right now. And the song is now playing live in front of a live audience. And it was me, who was there? I think me, my good mate and producer Bobby Kang, the producer of the song as well, Culprit, and like we're all behind the decks. And I swear to you, like when Sing played it, like that entire room was just screaming this song back at me. And I still remember like the look that I kind of gave to everyone, and I was just taken back, man. I have never experienced a high like that, or even slightly close to how euphoric it feels when you get it right. And that crowd definitely told me that you got it right. You know, when I speak about my upbringing and talking to people, the kind of people I was listening to growing up, you know, especially in the early 2000s, like Gypset, Krypton Conan, you know, Roadside G's, Gigs, Gets, Kano, Wiley, like Roll Deep at the time, Skepta, Boy Better Know, like this is my reality outside my house. But the reality is I've also been that South London kid that was so susceptible to East Coast, grimy, boom bap, like New York hip hop. And that is something that's seen throughout my entire body of work. However dissy you might think something is, the drum pattern, the kicks, the ultimate groove of everything we're doing has been very hip hop. You know, I'm a massive fan of Punjabi MC as well. I feel like the way he explored and gave the Punjabi, not only just the Punjabi scene, but the world scene, that you know, fusion was just undeniable. And you know, there's been a lot of other producers that have explored that, you know, Bali Sagu as well. And fusion wasn't really a new thing, but it is definitely cutting from that cloth of, maybe we talk about ancestry, but let's talk about the lineage of just being a UK British Punjabi artist and what UK British Punjabi producers were doing as well. You know, hip hop music and Punjabi music is just, they've always had a special bond. You know, when you, although being on very different parts of the world, you know, my mate Bobby Kang was mentioning this as well. Like, despite the fact that, you know, these people like a Marnak or a Shinda might have been in India at the time making music with Charanjit Ahuja, but like you've got someone in around that same decade in the States making a soul record or a Motown record, but they've still got the same groove. You know, they've still had the same pocket, the same soul. So when you sampled those things and put them together, it almost immediately clicked. And these are people through two different backgrounds, two different social class, Lord knows whatever ways you want to measure them, so different, so far apart, but musically have made the same pocket. And I think that's very exciting when I make my music, because I wanna kind of, you know, I want to capture that. And my thing is, I've always loved New York hip hop, and I want to show you that. Despite everything I've discussed today on this interview, one artist, despite the classical influences I've had and this, that, and the other, if it comes down to one thing that I've mainly been a massive fan of that has really impacted me as an artist, whether it's the way you see the silhouette of Raf Saperra and the way I put my music out, it's undeniably Wu-Tang. I'm a massive fan of Wu. So when we explore that, you know, I've always seen like Jazzy B and Pinda Jat as my Ghostface, Killer, and Raekwon. You know, the Gambinos, They had that in the 90s in hip hop. We had that in 90s Bhangra. Whether you want to see it like that or not is you know, that's why I'm making this shit, because that's how I see it. You know, it's my perspective. But essentially, the point I'm trying to make is that style of Ghost and Ray, you know, like, and Wu-Tang in general, just spitting off beat, grabbing the bar. Then you've got Riz's like production style. It's grimy, and I wanted to make something that gives a Punjabi music audience essentially a product that has not been made for the commercial market. I don't care how well this does on radio. This was not intended for nightclubs playing this stuff. Like, this is honestly a non-commercial product I've made. This is my side quest whilst being Raf Saperra, and not losing sight of the fact that I want to make the art that I want to make. I've heard the saying that in order to become an overnight success, it takes at least a decade's worth of work. And I truly believe that is something I've lived through. And I don't know, man, maybe people see my stuff and think I got really lucky. And you know, my first few songs that I put out, I built, you know, a following and you know, a cult following, would I say, that when I release merch, the kind of price it sells for, and, you know, that people are so looking forward to this, that, and the other. But, yo, that's come through a lot of trial and error. That's come through a lot of insecurities, a lot of pain, and a lot of growth that I'm still going through right now. You know what I'm saying? And I would say, you know, there's been moments throughout my you know, short, like, you know, not so long-lived career where I've been surrounded by uncertainties. And a big moment of that was, you know, after, you know, releasing Snake Charm on my third single, I was faced with something on a professional and a personal level, where I was met with roadblocks. Actually, I don't shy from saying this. Like, people who are in the UK Punjabi music industry undeniably tried to set up roadblocks, and to go through that as a complete outsider who has no family history or background in music, to be in a moment of uncertainty like that, where you've not only been dealt with things outside of music, but even with music. I've done this amazing Bhangra track. I've worked with Punjabi MC. These are my two darlings of Punjabi music production, and I want to be true to the work that I want to make. Like, I'm hitting a glass ceiling above my head. Like, now what? Do I continue working with these producers? Do we continue giving them, you know, Punjabi, Bhangra? Or, like, what do we do? And I think the reality is, like, when you are in an uncomfortable situation, that is undeniably growth taking place. And, you know, I started the year 2022 with a track called Simplicit. That was on like a UK rap vibe. Then we dropped Curates, which was honestly a love letter that I wrote to someone who I was falling for. And when people think of love letters, they think of, oh my God, like, he's gonna talk about bringing her the stars and the moon. And I just wrote the grimiest and borderline my most adult Punjabi track till date. I don't know if that's a good thing, but there you go. That came out, then we gave you Lil Gade, then came NLS, and then came Modern Mirza, all in 1 year. And it was a result of me feeling so uncomfortable that brought me to that point. The fact that I went through so much uncertainty, I think what it really locked me into was, I don't know what the market wants. I don't know what the labels want. I don't give a fuck what anyone wants. Like, what is my voice? What's given me the most peace? And I was just essentially making the music, especially that year, that I wanted to make. And I took so many risks, tapping into music genres. Curates was probably my most like grimiest hip hop track at the time. Lalkare was just like unavoidably like UK Bhangra. NLS was the first time I dabbled in like UK garage. And then Modern Mirza was like, you know, the first time me and longtime collaborator Bobby Kang actually worked together. And, you know, bringing this, you know, fusion of Punjabi folk and hip hop, and then having, you know, West Punjab, and in particular Lahore, a very iconic city for both Charda and Lenda Punjab, and having that as a grimy backdrop for this very East Coast hip hop sound that has essentially been made by a British-born Punjabi producer and vocalist was just an extremely satisfying, you know, I guess result to see how well that project done, because this was like the ultimate rum punch of what it is to be Raf Saperra, you know, like whether that is me taking massive production cameras like Arri Alexas and anamorphic lenses into my neighborhood in Androon, inner city Lahore, where the culture is grimy and the people are active, and we don't want to create a set. I had my cousins and a few other Punjabi artists saying, why don't you visit this part, or why don't you do this, or this is like, I'm not trying to make that. I'm trying to show you it rugged and raw. I'm trying to show you the streets that when we used to go check in with my bua in Lahore, bro, like what those streets look like. And when you then put an artist who is now just like performing in the middle of an environment that, you know, where attitudes, characteristics, and just everything is so raw, like there is a reason why Modern Mirza looks like that. There's a massive contrast you've seen even in the Mirza video, how the village life looks and how, you know, the city life looks. And we don't make this stuff to like promote a certain aesthetic, but as I said, like this is my truth. Why am I going to go in the defense or a nice part of Pakistan and shoot this music video when I am not from the defense or a nice part of Pakistan? Why am I going to take my camera and start shooting things of me in some very hi-fi tip-top areas of London when my upbringing ain't necessarily been there? I'm growing, I'm making my bag. There's a lot of things that I want to do, whether that's exploring the high fashion to the you know, the high living style. I deserve that. I'm a hardworking man, but I'm gonna show you where we come from, you know. And when you walk with that authenticity, you see people welcoming you with open arms. Like the places, my recent project, which was 5 Deadly Venoms, a hip hop EP, grimy thing that we made in New York. We've pulled up for the music videos like Hood Harvest into East like New York. We've been in those pockets of Brooklyn where you don't be pulling up with these kind of cameras. Do you know what I'm saying? We shot the stuff in Pink House Projects. We was in Brownsville. We was in Harlem. I'm not saying this as in oh, look at me and how cool I am for going to these like hoods, but like we were welcomed there with love because the intention was right. You know what I'm saying? We've shown that culture love, and that culture has seen the love, and they've welcomed us with open arms. There's a lot of things to like factor in, like, you know, the financial aspect of being an artist, you know, the kind of the image of being an artist, but more so to myself, as in like, why am I doing any of this? And I'll be very real with you, and it's not me even trying to like kind of take an easy route out. It's just me, as I've been as honest and given you my truth. I really don't know. I have known that there's just been a voice in me, and it's always told me, do it, you can do it. And I remember sitting with, rest in peace, my brother Sidhu Musiala, and we had this conversation. He's mentioned in numerous interviews, very openly, you know, like, visually I'm not the image of a very good looking man. I don't come from this, I don't come from that, but you know, I'm still gonna do it. And when I asked him, I was like, despite all of those struggles, why did you? And he's like, Raf, I'm not gonna lie, but there was just this voice in me that used to tell me, do it, you can do it. So what if these men have got X, Y, Z going on? You ain't any less. I've done my fair share of the corporate jobs and having the 9-to-5 and forcing that narrative and believing to do that. And I swear to you, I had to have a conversation with my family and let them know I have been living my entire life based on what you lot want. I am someone who understands consequences, who understands a lot of stuff, but I've never really taken life too seriously. If I had taken life seriously, I wouldn't have thought that I'd be the kid from South London that's selling out venues in Canada and growing internationally, like, and growing rapidly a cult following that maybe, you know, the Punjabi UK scene hasn't seen for decades. I had to be crazy to believe that. And that wasn't necessarily a belief I started with, but there was always a voice in me that's just telling me, I need to do this, I need to do this. And there was a weird sense of belief as well, like, let me leave a life of steady paychecks and stability to do something that has no promise and potentially no future for me. And I think the way I've always seen myself, just to answer your question, is for me, there's never been a plan B. Because if there's plan B, like, there's already a sense of doubt. I have enough faith in whatever that spirit or that voice is in my soul. And I feel like if it was genuinely something that was a fad or like something I was going through at the time, I think that voice would have stopped speaking to me a very long time ago. Me sitting in front of you lot today is not a result of me being an individual who's gonna preach about how to be the best musician, because I've done years worth of work and honing my craft and vocal training. No, I'm probably not the best example of a music student, but I did have my fundamental values in knowing that I have to learn my craft. I am not sitting here in front of you lot because I've got some industry family member that's given me the bring-in. I'm not sitting here because, oh, I'm so talented and I have, like, there is definitely a massive blessing that I've had, and I'm aware of the fact that there are so many able musicians and artists who might not have received the same respect, gratitude and opportunities that I've received. So for me to sit down and think that this is all because I'm hardworking, which I undeniably am, but talented, no. I have been very fortunate with the kind of luck I have been exposed to, and one thing I have maintained is not to keep bad intentions. I don't know what people's intentions are, but I believe when you step foot out there to work on whatever you're working on and your intentions are right, you know, things will work out, you know. And I just, you know, I've been very lucky, 100%. And yeah, I say a lot of things with the utmost humility, of the fear of my, you know, of my creator, and the tutelage and the kind of mannerisms and adab I've been taught by my gurus and my ustads. But one thing I shamelessly say, that there might be a lot of able musicians and vocalists who will outshine me any time and day of the week or the year or of my entire career. But I am the flyest Punjabi artist there ever was. And I genuinely believe that. And being fly don't come from the Gucci tracksuit or the high fashion garms you're wearing. Fly is when I pull up on stage and I rock a crowd anytime, anywhere. And when you know how to chat to a generation, I'm not saying I'm the only one who's been able to chat, but undeniably, I will be remembered, and I should be remembered, and I plan to be remembered as the flyest to ever do it.